Hello, welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. Let's talk about books. Today I would like to talk about The Known World by Edward P. Jones. If you've been watching my channel, you may have seen me open this as a mysterious book that I got from the used bookstore, and you'll see we're gonna open one more in this video as well. But before we get to that, The Known World is a historical fiction novel that follows a plantation in a fictional county in Virginia, run by a man named Henry Townsend. And what makes Henry Townsend different from other slaveholders is that he himself is Black and was once a slave. And one of the reasons that Jones says that he wrote this novel from this perspective is that not a lot of people, and I'll include myself in this, not a lot of people knew that there were in fact Black slaveholders. And apart from the obvious reason for that, it was also very expensive to own slaves. I'm going to attempt to speak intelligently about this book. It is so gorgeous. It is so beautifully written. It is heartbreaking. It is wrenching. It has happy moments, and it also has incredible sadness and tragedy. The story of this plantation is told out of order, but not in a confusing way. And while it took me like maybe a chapter to realize, oh wait, the reason we're talking about this person in this scenario is because that other thing that we just read about hasn't happened yet, it didn't take me long to pick up on it. So it is very well done that we're moving back and forth in time. Jones does a really good job of anchoring you in the timeline of the story, which I really liked. He does a good job of reminding you who the characters are and not expecting you to rely fully on your memory, but it also doesn't feel, because there are a lot of characters, but it also doesn't feel like he's talking down to the reader or saying, well, of course you can't remember more than 3 characters, but rather, oh yeah, this guy. And here's the thing about him. Okay, now let's talk about what's going on with this guy. Also in the back of my edition of the book, there is a list of characters with just a very short couple of words describing who they are, which I did refer to a few times, and I did find it really helpful. We're following Henry, his wife Caldonia, his parents, the slaves on his plantation, and the other slave owners and the sheriff, the men of power in this community. The story is set just before the last decades, before the Civil War and before slavery was abolished. And so Jones also gives us, for certain characters, a glimpse into their far future, into what their lives are like after slavery is abolished, after they are free, after they are able to do what they want to do with their lives. What do they do with their lives? Where do they end up? This book showed up on the New York Times recent list of the best 100 books to be published in this century so far. And it definitely belongs there. I haven't read every book on the list. I didn't agree with every book on the list. I didn't agree with the full list, but that's a whole other conversation. So as I said earlier, the primary setting of this book is the plantation owned by a Black man who has enslaved other Black people. And there's this really interesting discussion of what it means to be the owner of other humans. And he talks about not just the emotions and the experiences, but also some of the logistics. He talks about how much people pay for other humans. So it goes back and forth between being really touching and emotional to being that cold and calculating. And I really thought that was well done, because I would think in order to participate in this system, you have to shut off a part of yourself and become cold and calculating in order to think it's a good idea to purchase another person. One of the most interesting scenes in this book for me is when Henry tells his parents that he has taken this step in his life. So Henry and his parents, Augustus and Mildred, were all once enslaved. Augustus was able to earn money. He was allowed to earn money of his own, and he saved up enough to buy his own freedom, basically purchase himself from his owner. And then he made money on his own as a free man and was able to purchase his wife and then his son. And so Henry is born into slavery and lives a lot of his formative years in that environment, and the plantation owner comes to like him. And so when Augustus purchases Henry's freedom, this plantation owner, William Robbins, becomes a mentor to Henry, which is such a strange dynamic. And Henry learns from Robbins how to make money, how to establish himself as a landowner the only way that Robbins knows how, which is to buy a piece of property, buy some slaves, build a house, plant crops, and that is how you make your money. So Henry follows this advice and he becomes quite successful at it. But there's this scene, as I mentioned, where he tells his parents that he has purchased his first slave. And Henry has hesitated to say anything. He doesn't tell them right away. He says to himself that it's because, well, he wants to build his house first and he wants to have something to show. But I think there is something inside of him that knows there's, at some level, he must know that they're not going to react well to this, and they do not. And there's this moment of shock, of course, when he tells them that he has purchased a slave. And not that he's purchased someone for the sake of freeing him, but purchased someone to keep them. So his mother is just in shock, and I want to read this segment of her thought process. So his father says, "You mean to tell me you bought a man and he's yours now? You bought him and you didn't free that man? You own a man, Henry?" "Well, yes, Papa." Henry looked from his father to his mother. Mildred stood up too. "Henry, why?" she said. "Why would you do that?" She went through her memory for the day she and her husband told him all about what he should and should not do. No going out to the woods without Papa or me knowing about it. No stepping foot outside the house without the free papers. Not even to go to the well or the privy. Say your prayers every night. "Do what, Mama? What is it?" "Pick the berries close to the ground, son. Those are the sweetest, I find. If a white man says the trees can talk, can dance to you, say yes right along. Then you done seen him do it plenty of times. Don't look them people in the eye. You see a white woman riding towards you, get way off the road and go stand behind a tree. The uglier the white woman, the farther you go and the broader the tree. But where, in all she taught her son, was it about thou shalt own no one, having been owned once your own self. Don't go back to Egypt after God done took you out of there." "Don't you know the wrong of that, Henry?" Augustus said. "No, nobody ever told me the wrong of that." "Why should anyone have to teach you the wrong, son?" And that scene really got me, because Mildred is trying to figure out how it's her fault, because she and her husband know so firmly why slavery is wrong. They experienced it themselves. It never occurred to them that their son would not notice this as well. And she's realizing the influence that this white slave owner has had on her son in their absence. There's another moment where Augustus is wondering if he should have purchased his son first instead of his wife. And all these decisions that they've made as parents. It's just heartbreaking. Now Henry ultimately continues on his path. He buys more slaves, he makes more money, he gets married to a black woman, he continues to establish himself as a plantation owner. And part of this book is about what happens after he dies. His wife has to take over the plantation, how that goes. But ultimately, this is a story about people, about society, about the interactions that happen between people. And it is about race, it is about class, it is about operating in a horrendous and broken system. And it's such a gorgeous novel. I will not say this is an easy book to read. It is not, but the writing is beautiful. And I would be interested in reading more from Edward P. Jones, having read this. I'm going to stop rambling because I feel like I'm rambling. Read this. It's so good. Read this. Oh, content warnings. The content warnings are probably self-evident, just like owning a person is wrong should be self-evident, but I'll call them out anyway because this book takes place during slavery in the United States. It includes the horrors that come from that, physical and sexual abuse and rape and murder. There is racism in here as well as racist slurs. Jones does not hold back on that language. He uses it in a way that makes sense for the story, and it doesn't feel gratuitous to me, but there are definitely scenes that I found upsetting, as there should be in a book about slavery. If you don't find any of it upsetting, then either the problem is you or the problem is the book. But anyway, so this is a very intense novel. But again, well worth the read, and such a good one. I finally finished another mysterious book. The next couple might be lighter or easier reads, but who knows? I never know what I'm getting into. But since we are close to the end of September, I'm gonna go ahead and open this book because my next video is going to be an announcement. So I'll put a little teaser in here for something we're doing in October. So stay tuned for next week's video on that topic, and I'll just leave that teaser there. But in the meantime, let's open our mysterious October book from the used bookstore. Okay, as I was opening this, and I'm looking at these for the first time. I did not wrap these. I have no idea what's in here. As I was opening this, I saw Robin Hood, which is kind of kryptonite for me. Robin Hood, Merlin, I'm a sucker for those. This is Hood by Stephen R. Lawhead. So sounds like a retelling, but we'll read the back here. For centuries, the legend of Robin Hood and his band of thieves has captured the imagination. Now, the old familiar tale takes on a new life, fresh meaning, and an unexpected setting. So it looks like this is a Robin Hood retelling that is set in Wales. Primeval forest of the Welsh borders. Interesting. So it's medieval Britain. All right, so this is set in medieval Britain. It's a Robin Hood story. I mean, I'm sold. When I was a kid, my two favorite movies, my two favorite Disney movies were The Sword and the Stone and Robin Hood. And so I'm excited about this one. I will feel a personal sense of betrayal if this is not good. But let me know if you've read this. Let me know if my excitement is warranted. And let me know if you read either of these books, what you thought of them. And I will be catching up on my mysterious books. I believe I'm 5 behind now, including this one. That's not too bad. I've been working on a project, which you'll hear about next week, and then you'll understand why I'm so behind. But my hope is in October I'll have some more reading time and I'll be able to catch up a little bit. All right, so let me know, have you read either of these books? What did you think of them? And either way, I will see you in the next one.